Hey everybody, welcome to Crazy Tech Lab. Got a pretty quick video for you today because we have a brand new slim fan from Scythe and it is the Kaze Flex II 120 Slim. So obviously Scythe producing one of the most popular slim fans out there for small form factor guys. The Kaze Flex 120 Slim was very popular. Didn't quite top all the tables in my recent group test. There were a couple of fans that were slightly better, and obviously the Silverstone Air Slimmer 120 RGB is the best fan out there right now. So I'm going to be super interested to see if this fan, new fan from Scythe, can actually topple the Silverstone in terms of being the best slim fan out there. So in terms of specifications, this thing can reach 1800 RPM, which is exactly the same as the Silverstone. So it's going to be a direct competition between those two. In terms of pricing, we've got a dollar price of $17 for this fan. So it's really good value. We don't have RGB lighting, whereas the Silverstone is available either in non-RGB or RGB flavors. And here in the UK, the Scythe is pretty expensive. It's around 26 pounds. So not the most best value fan over here in terms of slim 120mm fans, but it's pretty good value in the US. So don't forget to like and comment on this video. Always just helps punch me up the algorithm. And don't forget to comment on this video and subscribe as well. Don't forget to turn on the notification button so you are notified when I have new videos. We have quite a few more slim 120mm fans to get through, and of course the highly anticipated slim 140mm fan group test as well. So without further ado, let's move on to the reviews. So here we have the Scythe Kaze Flex II 120 Slim, and as you can see, the difference between the original version and the new version is aesthetically just one that is lacking any kind of color or alternative colors. It's all black this time around, and kind of horses to courses here. It depends what your preferences are for your particular build. I kind of prefer the original design. It just made it stand out from the crowd a bit more. The key difference though, if you flip it over, you might notice a bit more of a difference here, that the new fan is actually slimmer. It is now a true 15mm thick fan rather than 17mm of the previous model, largely down to these thick rubber mounts here. Now the benefit of that will be that if you fit this onto something, the fan is actually going to ride up away from the object, for example a radiator, because of these anti-vibration mounts, and that means that there's the potential for air to escape around the edges rather than blowing through the object that you're trying to cool, such as a radiator. So the fact that the new fan, as you can see around here, not just the frame is actually thinner, but the anti-vibration mounts now sit flush with the fan frame. So that means that this fan is going to sit directly on to the object that you're trying to cool, whether it's the back of your case or on a radiator, which means that the air is essentially sealed in there, and that should create slightly better airflow and static pressure, which is hopefully going to result in a slight uptick in performance in the graphs that we'll look at in a minute. So that's pretty much it from an aesthetic talk around point of view. Not much going on other than a slight aesthetic tweak in terms of colors and a slightly thinner fan frame. Everything else seems to be pretty much the same. You've got near identical, if not identical, model numbers there. The fan draws the same amount of amps, so nothing really has changed in terms of raw performance. Accessories in the box, you get anti-vibration rubber mounting screws and standard fan screws. No radiator screws included here, so you'll need to get your own and make sure you get the right ones for your slim radiator, because you can't use standard radiator screws because they will probably, they're too long, they go through a slim fan and they go ploughing into your radiator and will probably cause it to leak. Only other accessory in the box is an extension cable for 4-pin PWM control. That's probably just so you can use this fan in larger cases, because the cable is relatively short out of the box. Not crazy short, but relatively short, and it's probably designed to be used in small form factor cases. So that's the difference between the old model and the new model, and all the other specifications, the RPM and everything is the same at 1800 RPM, and you get the same accessories in the box as well. So this first graph is purely the overall score for those of you that don't want to have to sift through all the massive data that I've gathered over the next few graphs. If that's you and you just want an at-a-glance view as to how your fan has done or how the fans overall have done, then this is the graph for you. The scores are simply given to each fan in each graph depending on where it sits. So it's a good at-a-glance view of how that fan has done. So the Scythe Kaze Flex II 120 Slim offering a couple of extra points over the original version, which sits directly directly below it in the graph, but it's still not enough to topple any of the top 3 performing fans, namely the Silverstone Air Slimmer at the top, the Alpha-Cool SL15 PWM, and the Roswell Ultra Slim Fan, or Akasa Slim Fan as it's now known. So overall then, a reasonable increase in performance and noise reduction from the Kaze Flex II, but it's only really an incremental upgrade from the original version, largely down to a slimmer fan frame. So overall, in the airflow results, we have an upper mid-table result for the Kaze Flex II 120 Slim, which offered a tiny amount extra performance over the original fan, which was enough to leapfrog some of the other fans sitting between it and the top of the table, namely the Alpha-Cool SL15 PWM at full speed, and at 1000 RPM, it managed to leapfrog the Roswell or Akasa Slim Fan. However, there were no real changes in its position in the graph at 1500 RPM. So here we have our first real-world test result, and we have each fan strapped to a 120mm radiator in a custom liquid loop cooling a Core i5 10600K running at stock speed. So we have a great result for the Scythe Kaze Flex II 120 Slim, sitting at 77 degrees at the top of the full speed graph. So excellent full speed airflow and static pressure from this fan. Dropping down to 1500 RPM, and the result is slightly less impressive, dropping down one place to third, and still about a degree or so cooler than the original fan, and that's likely due to the fact that the new fan sits much closer to the radiator than the old one. So dropping down to 1000 RPM, and the two fans are pretty much performing the same. So we have a lot lower airflow here, and again though, it is dropping further down the graph compared to other fans such as the Alpha-Cool SL15 and the Silverstone Air Slimmer. Moving on to the noise results now then, and it's the bottom two graphs that we should be primarily considering because they are the RPM normalized results. The full speed test at the top obviously has all the different fans spinning at their different maximum RPMs. There's a whole bunch of different maximum speeds going on there, so we can't read too much from it other than comparing the original fan and the new version of the Kaze Flex, which at full speed, the dBA registered on our noise meter was exactly the same. It was a touch quieter at 1000 RPM, but again, the decibels were exactly the same at 1500 RPM, although there's maybe a very slight difference in subjective noise quality, which we'll get to in a minute, just because there's maybe slightly less air escaping from around the radiator, thanks to the thinner anti-vibration mounts and fan frames. So overall, it's a mid-table result for the noise of the Kaze Flex II. Moving on to subjective sound quality then, this is essentially my own personal opinion as to how pleasant a fan is to sit next to. Now, this isn't the same as decibels, it is purely whether a fan has a particular unpleasant tone or other noise that makes it unpleasant to sit next to, such as a ticking or a drone or something like that. So what you want is just a pure kind of low airflow noise. That's what you're looking for, and some of the fans on test do exhibit those things, such as the Arctic P12 Slim, the Silverstone Air Slimmer. The Scythe Kaze Flex wasn't quite as pleasant as to sit next to at full speed or at 50 dBA as those fans. So it's fairly well down the graph, although not quite as bad as some of the worst performing fans on test. And obviously, we're not really looking at much of a difference between the original Kaze Flex and the Kaze Flex II. Moving on to the airflow to noise ratio, which is probably more interesting than just raw airflow or noise numbers, because here, the higher the fan is in the graph, the more airflow it produces for less noise. So that's quite a good quality to have. And as we can see, the Silverstone Air Slimmer performing particularly well across all three graphs at all three speeds here. The Scythe Kaze Flex actually not doing too badly. I know it did fairly badly in the actual raw noise test, but in terms of the airflow that it actually produces for that noise, it's actually doing fairly well. In fact, at full speed, it comes third behind the Silverstone Air Slimmer and the Corsair AF120 Slim. So it's always important not to just judge your or base your purchase just on one graph. It's important to look at multiple graphs, but if you're going to look at one, I would probably look at this one here or these three graphs here, because they show how much airflow you get per decibel essentially. So what we've got is a sort of upper mid-table result for the Scythe Kaze Flex, but it's most efficient in terms of producing more airflow to noise at full speed. Moving on to the noise normalized testing now then, and what we've got here are two specific noise levels, 44 dBA and 50 dBA, which are essentially equivalent to idle and a medium speed where your fan is maybe ramping up to cool your case or cool a radiator or something like that. So what we've got here are the airflow at those two noise levels. So if you're more concerned about tuning your fans to a specific noise level, so if you've got sensitive ears perhaps, or you just don't want them to sit above a certain level, then these are the graphs for you. So here again, the Scythe Kaze Flex II Slim offering pretty much the same result as the previous fan, slightly better on the 44 dBA result, but overall pretty much the same. It's still a mid-table result. Plenty of fans doing slightly better than it as well in the graphs. Moving on to the pricing then, so we can get an idea of where all the fans sit in terms of value. The Scythe Kaze Flex II 120 Slim, pretty much mid-table, $17, reasonable for a reasonably high-performing fan. However, there are a couple down the table that I would draw your attention to, such as the AlphaCool SL15 PWM, the Akasa Slim Fan, or Roswell, depending on where you are in the world as to what it's called, and also the Arctic P12 Slim PWM. That's a very, very good fan for the money, although it doesn't offer a spectacular amount of airflow. So also worth noting is the original Kaze Flex 120 Slim. It doesn't really perform that much worse, if at all, than the new fan, and it will save you $3 a fan. So that's obviously if you're kitting out your case with 4 fans, 6 fans, or a bunch of fans strapped to radiators, then that could save you several fans worth of money by opting for the older version, and I kind of prefer the aesthetics on the older one as well. So that's it for the graphs. So what do we make of the Scythe Kaze Flex II 120 Slim then? Well, Scythe only made some very minor adjustments to the design here, so we are not looking at a fan that is going to leapfrog many other fans in the graphs. In fact, the improvements to airflow and noise reduction were actually very tiny, and only the tiniest bit above the previous model. Now, where this fan does really come into its own is the fact that it is a true 15mm thick fan now, rather than 17mm before, and we do have a couple of other fans that are slightly thicker than the true Slim standard. We've got an all black fan design now, and I kind of prefer the previous colours, if I'm honest, with the grey green accents and that kind of stuff. But if you're after an all black fan that performs pretty well, then this is definitely worthy of your shortlist, especially if you're in certain parts of the world where it is cheaper. Now, as I mentioned though, it's not going to leapfrog any of the super performing fans out there, and it also doesn't offer that much of an upgrade, if at all, over its predecessor. If its predecessor and this are the same price, definitely go for the newer model. It's just slightly better in terms of airflow and noise quality, and it is thinner as well, which is probably the most significant change there. So I would like to thank Scythe for sending over the fan. Don't forget to check out my other videos, and don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Subscribing particularly important at the moment, because I've got loads more Slim fan reviews coming up in the next few days. So don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button so you are notified when I upload new videos. And don't forget to comment on this video as well. Just helps punch me through the algorithm and keeps this channel going. So thanks for watching, and I'll be back very, very soon.